Okay, so we copy here and press copy. And we're going to paste it here, but this time we paste special and we want to paste the transfers. So it'll convert it from a column to a row, right? Okay. So we paste the transfers. I hope it's recording. Nazra, what do you think? Is it recording? Okay. The next thing that we do here is we know the following. We know that 40% of the sales are in cash, 45% are paid during the following month, and 50% in the month after. So we'll put that in here. And we'll put our percentages here, 40% and 45% and 15%. And of course, these numbers you could change. So since you can change these numbers, let's make sure they always add up to 100, right? So this number, 15%, is not discretionary anymore. If you change your terms of trade, and you collect more cash here and more in the second month, then that number will be by default. So we'll change that 100% minus these two. So that it always sums up to 100. Okay. And once we have that, then we can figure out what our collections are. So since it's 40% here, we can say this guy is going to be this. And let's keep that row times this here. And let's keep this. Let's keep that column. So, Nick, why did I reference it that way though?
So that it's always, like when you drag it across, it's going to always reduce 40% that's above it.
So it always stay at the 40%, but then it will allow the sales levels to change. And if I copy it down, then it will shift down here, but it will stay on this row. Okay? So that's kind of fine. That's 116. So out of that, we collect 116 here. The next amount we collect is this sales level times by here. Okay. And the last amount then is this times 15%. So we have essentially the 291,000. We split this way. 116,000 in the first month, 130,000 the next month. And those arrows were just for expositional purposes, so we can get rid of those arrows. That's how the first sales comes in. And so now, of course, Nick says we can just drag stuff across to October. And we can drag stuff across here, and we can drag stuff across here. So ideally, this plus this plus this should be equal to 387,000. and this plus this should be 329,000, and so on. So let's move back here. And I'm going to freeze the page, right? I mean, so we noticed that when I had moved to October, I could no longer see what was going on here. And so I want to be able to just keep what's going on here locked. And when we move down, we'll no longer be able to see the month, so we want to keep what's going on in the month locked. Right, Olivia? So in order to do that, we'll just click here, and we'll freeze this pane. So when you are in any cell, if you so-called freeze the pane, you freeze the columns to the right, and they stay there in the screen. And as you scroll, these will stay. And you freeze the row above, and it stays there. And as you scroll, that stays. Okay? And if you only want to freeze the column, you can only freeze the column. If you only want the row, and so on. So we'll just freeze that. So we'll freeze everything, row and column. That way, when we scroll, okay, this stays. And when we scroll down, okay, that will stay as well. Okay, so now we can calculate our total collections here. And our total collections, let's start here. And do a little bit of formatting. Okay, so okay, so that's our total collection. So we know essentially that in the month of June, we're going to collect this amount in terms of cash. But this amount here, 362, even though our sales was 387, this amount we collect as cash comes from receivables. We're collecting on receivables from April and May. So we're collecting this from May and this from April. And we're also collecting a certain amount of cash. So that's our collections. Okay. We can now go to our payments. So for our payments, we put what our purchases were. We have inventory is 50% of the following month's sales. So what we're assuming then is that here we're going to take June's forecasted sales times 50%. And let's put that here. Okay. For now it says 0. Well, let's put 50% here. This is just telling us that inventory is 50% of sales. This number is a little bit cryptic. That is, you and I, we know what it is, but some strange person who hasn't seen the PowerPoint slide may not understand what this is. with these numbers, they kind of are self-explanatory. Cash is 40%, first month is this, second month is that, but this number is a little bit cryptic. So you actually would want to put a comment here or a text box to explain to the user what this 50% means. So let's insert then the comment. And we can insert so that explains what that is. So the user then will always be able to see what that number means. Okay, we're saying in the first month, this is how much you are buying inventory here, but you're not going to pay for everything. Okay? You're going to pay in the first month. You'll pay 60%, and then in the first month you pay 60%, and then in the second month you'll pay the balance.
Why did your September and October sales change? Or August and September?
It did? It changed? Changed from what?
I don't know. Why do I have September?
Aren't the numbers the same?
238. Oh, okay, why do I have 75? Oh, you're just, okay, I see. Hang on.
You don't like the formatting?
No, it's just, your screen is, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so why don't you guys go and what we did up here, go and do here, and come down with your total payments. Okay? So the first month, you get 60% of the inventory is paid, and then the next month then is the rest. I'm not even sure which. Numbers are a little bit different. Okay. So, so note that what we're saying here is that you don't pay any cash on it. So there's no cash paid in May. Okay? But 60% is paid the first month afterwards, and then the rest is paid next month afterwards. So we have this guy here. Can be, and right here. So there's 193. You collect the inventory, okay, and then you pay some in June, and then the rest in July. Let's leave these out for now. So we'll just drag this across to here. Okay, we're good? We have the same numbers? Okay, so this, of course, you have to drag across because this is saying this is 50% of next month's sales. So you have to take this here. You have to make sure you reference properly so that it allows the columns to change, the sales levels to change. It always locks in on the 50%, right, Nick? And then you can drag that across. So this is 164 is the amount of inventory that you will hold for here, 119 for here. And then the rest, of course, we assume that you order just in time, okay? So the rest of the sales figures, you just order in June and sell right away. But you hold this on hand.
We don't drag it across all the way to October.
Well, there's no forecast for sales for November. So if you did, it's gets yeah, so it's no resistance. Okay, our total payments then,
Carlton,
yeah,
can you just go back to the 193 report you want to know?
this one here?
You won't get your inventory acquired until October, but you would still get some good news from August and September.
Yes, yes. Because there's no sales figure for November, so unless you want forecasts for November, but we don't have any forecast for November. So this is, I'm surprised it's not showing, but this is E5. What's E5?
Yeah.
Oh, E5 is way up here, our sales. Well, there, times this. Okay, okay. Now, we have our sales and our sort of total collections and our total payments here. Our total payments in June, say this is based on my inventory here, that's my inventory. Yeah. What do you think? Maybe we should put one here, okay? Ryan, what do you think? That is, if we have our April inventory, it will allow us to fill in this box here. So we'll take this guy times and So. So it allows us to fill in then May here. And this, we can then just sub. So what we have so far are total collections and our total payments. Now, so that's good.
Yeah, can you just go back to the 73,000?
This one here. So you've got this guy. So all I did, I just copied what was in this cell. If it was referenced properly, just copy and paste it. And they say, okay, that should be.
I got the same number. I got 7740 if I copy paste.
Then you must have absolutely locked this guy in, which means these numbers wouldn't be right.
All of those are right.
All those are right?
I think you got, your sum is all three numbers.
My sum is what?
Yeah, that's 353,600. You shouldn't be summing the top. You've got all three numbers there.
Oh, all three?
Yeah, so you got payments twice, basically. 150% of your inventory.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. So we should just do this guy here. So, which means really, let's make sure we don't. Let's put that here. And here. So this kind of tells us, then at least it tells me that this is our sales and this is our inventory, but these guys then are the cash, actual cash amounts. So the shaded part then are not really cash numbers, but the unshaded ones are the cash numbers. So now, did you get to 73?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just save that there for now. And so now we can come down here and fix up the cash. Okay. One thing that we can do, of course, is all these cells here have helped us work out what our cash payments are, our cash collections are, and our cash disbursements are in terms of inventory payments. Once we put those numbers down here, we don't really need to see these cells anymore. So they're kind of just like helper cells. Okay? So let's put the numbers down here. Let's put our collections here and our inventory payments here. And once we do that, let's get rid of this. When I say get rid of, let's hide it. Now you can hide by hiding the row, right? And so one way to hide, of course, is to highlight the entire row and then just hide. But that's a little bit much right now. It doesn't give you the flexibility to see things easily. So what we'll do, George, is we'll group them, right? So let's take the rows here. It's already grouped. So let's ungroup them first and then regroup them so we can see what's going on. sure where it. Where's the
It's under data.
data? Ah, so let's ungroup. Should have highlighted everything and ungroup it all. Not sure. Okay. Did you ungroup it? Or you just left it that way? Okay. So, anyways, to group cells, essentially what you do is you highlight the rules, for instance, here, and then you just hit group. When you hit that group, it'll group stuff, it'll group all of these up until there, and then that's sort of what would happen. So this has already been grouped. I'm not sure why I already grouped them.
What does grouping do?
So what grouping does is it allows you then to close down or hide the grouped columns or grouped rows. So if you click on this, okay, it will hide that. So all you'll see then is just collections. Okay? And you can group if you didn't want to see all this stuff here, you just wanted to see this and that, then you could group it separately. So I guess maybe we should try that. Okay? Let's ungroup first, okay? Okay, now, and then let's just group this guy here. We might want to see the sales. So we'll group this, and we might want to see the purchases. So we'll group that. And then, of course, we might want to get rid of everything, and we'll group that. So what we have is we have different ways of grouping. One way, for instance, is we could click here and here, and then all we see is our sales, our inventory purchases, and we see total cash payments. Okay? And so this summarizes things this way. Another way we could group it then is we could do it where everything is done. So we'll just do 3. Where we get rid of sales and so on. So we could do it this way or that way. So if it's grouped this way, you have 3 different ways of showing it. One way is to show everything, which is 3. One way is to show just the sales and total collections, and that's 2. And then one way is to get rid of them completely and go straight to collections, and that's 2. So, yeah. So we'll leave it like this. This is a little better. And now we can, you can just copy. October, inventory payments went all the way to September. And now our wages. So, Nick, I'll let you put that in. Wages are 60% of, wages are 20% of sales. Lease payments, 10,000 per month. Interest payments, 30,000 per month. Dividends are 50,000 in June. Tax prepayments, 25,000 in September. And we'll speak about the required cash balances. So why don't you guys input these here? Wages, interest payments, and tax prepayments into the spreadsheet here. Okay. Wages, lease payments, interest payments, dividends, taxes. So, can you read that okay, Colton? Okay. So wages are 20% of sales, lease payments there. Maybe we should put those numbers in here, at least with the wages. We'll put in 20% in here. Is that what you did, Clayton?
Right.
Well, again, we want to allow for change. So this is E5, which is sales for times. I have 77,000 for my wages. Nazrat, does that make sense? Okay. Lease is 10,000. Interest payment 30,000 per month. Dividend is paid in June, 50,000. And also in June and when? That's the only time dividends are paid? Okay. Tax prepayments, 25,000 June and September. And September. And the capital outlays, we assume for now, it's 200,000. So these are the additional disbursements. Okay. Wages, of course, will happen every month. Lease payments will also happen every month. Interest is every month. Dividends, nope. Taxes, nope. And this guy here. And so, We start off with a beginning cash balance, say, of 20,000, but we said we want our minimum acceptable cash to be 15,000. We change that here. This is our minimum cash balance, so we want to make sure we always have that in cash. We said we need this cash for different purposes. Key one is the transactions purpose. On a month-to-month basis, we need to pay certain things, we need to have certain amount of cash. And then, of course, we have the precautionary basis, and then we have the financing motive for holding cash. So, from what we have here, we have our beginning cash balance, we have our collections, and our collections are up here. And we have our unadjusted cash balance, which really then is just this guy plus this guy. Oh, sorry, collections minus disbursements. So, we put our total disbursements here, and our beginning cash balance here, collections minus disbursements. So, okay, so in June, this is what we have. Our disbursements are 381. Our collections were 362. And so we started off with 20,000 in cash in the bank. Our collections minus disbursements were negative 18,800. So we've eaten up some of this cash, we have 1,200. And so we needed to bring our balance to 15. Okay? Right now, it's at 1,200. It's below what we want to keep at the minimum cash balance. So Nick, what do? We need to borrow a certain amount. We need to draw on our line of credit into the cash account, right?
So yeah, I just use it as statement.
So Nick says, let's just use an if statement. So the if statement would be essentially if our balance here is below, right, 15,000, then borrow the amount necessary. So if our balance here be 31, and let's leave it there.
Don't you get a circular reference if you're using the if there?
Oh, sorry. What? Yeah, sorry. If not that balance, unadjusted balance. Unadjusted balance is less than our minimum accepted cash. And this guy here, we have to lock in. Then we borrow. And we borrow essentially this minimum amount, F4, minus what's there. Otherwise, don't borrow anything. Okay. So, yeah.
In the PowerPoint, it says minimum cash balance.
Yeah, we changed that. Oh, so let's change it to 15. But if you want it to be 20, Clayton, it's just here. Yeah, it is one of the control variables. Okay, so you can change that. It just will change how much you need to borrow. Yes.
Can you go back to the
Okay. So this tells us then about the cash balance here. Now, yes. Okay. And so with that, we can kind of just highlight all this and then just drag it across, right? Assuming everything's been done. Except for one thing here. We started off with 20,000, and so our beginning balance here should be our ending balance for the previous month. And so really then we'll drag this guy here. And we'll go out to September.
Did you lock in your June funds with the 18,800?
Sorry?
The 18,800, did you lock that in with the June one day?
Did I lock it in? No. Oh, you're getting different numbers?
No, like I have those, I just want to drag them. They're not-
Okay. Unadjusted cash balance, that seems to be about right. Okay, so that's, okay. So this is telling us a few things, and there are certain sort of certain assumptions we've made that when you do an actual cash budget, you'll have to add to this. Okay? So we'll add a little bit more to this on Wednesday. What we're going to add is the following. We're going to ask ourselves, if you borrow this amount of cash here, you borrow this amount of cash, then you're going to be paying interest on it. So we'll add the interest payment. So we'll go up here and we'll have two interest payments. This is our long-term debt, and then we'll have short-term debt interest payments, which will depend on how much you borrowed in the short term. So that's one thing we'll add in there. The next thing, of course, is that when you get to here, you're sitting on 91,000 in cash. Okay? You only need 15,000. That's your minimum. Do you really need to keep 91,000 in cash? So we can ask ourselves, suppose you put a maximum. You're saying the minimum we need is 15,000, but we really don't need more, say, than 30,000. So we'll have a minimum balance and a maximum, okay? And if it's in that range, you leave it in the cash account. If it's outside that range, you take the excess and you invest in short-term securities, or you pay down some debt. So what we want to do now, of course, is we want to ask ourselves, even though we have this amount that's here, we had borrowed 13,000, borrowed 120,000, and we have 91,000, but we still owe. So down here, let's insert, okay, down here, let's insert a couple of rows. So that's the first thing here. And over here, let's put then our cumulative borrowing. I don't know if I want to put it, it's not even here, but let's, for cumulative borrowing, what we're saying is, we borrowed this amount here, and here, we owed this, plus we borrowed this, and the same is true for here. So this tells us, of course, that we don't need that to be bold. This tells us that we're carrying 13,800 in debt, short-term debt on our line of credit. It's gone up to 135, and it's just stayed there. Okay? So really, there's no point in sitting with all this in your cash account when you owe this. So what you want then is you want, for now, okay, and the last thing we'll do today is we want to say, if this amount is more than the minimum, let's pay down some debt. Okay? So go ahead and toss an if statement in there and say essentially, this cumulative borrowing here, this is the current borrowing. It could be that you borrowed a certain amount, which is this, or you paid it down. So we could, for instance, in bracket, if it's going to be negative, we could do a repayment. Okay? We could repay. So you could borrow or you could repay, depending on if you're cash. So why don't you see if you can figure out. So you're going to have to put an if statement inside this if statement. And you probably want to start with this guy here. You want to say if it's less than the minimum, you certainly want to borrow. If it's not, okay, then you want to use that balance and pay down the debt. Okay, Nick? So,
Do we need to know what our maximum cash balance is?
not yet. We'll come to that. So we want to build it up. Okay, for now, we're just going to pay down the debt and go back down to 15,000. So we want the following: if our, what is it called? F29 is less than B35, okay, and this is our minimum balance, and this is our unadjusted balance. If our unadjusted balance is less than the minimum balance, then pay down the debt. Okay? B35 minus, you borrow this amount. And that's what we have so far. Yep. Okay. Otherwise, now we put another if statement here. Or, actually, we don't really, do we need an if statement? We don't really need an if statement. Otherwise, take the difference. It means it's bigger. So otherwise, F29 is bigger. And so take F29 minus B35. This is by how much bigger, right? Yeah. And pay down the debt. So this amount essentially you want. So try that and see, will that work? And then put this here. So we can see now it sticks at this, and we can see that our debt has been paid down by certain amounts. Okay, let's call it a day here, and